know if I should say Fort Berthold or Deerfield, but I've been there. And yeah.
I'm Peekaboo Reeves. I'm from Standing Rock in Fort Berthold.
I'm Micah Rittershart, and I'm from System.
My name is Mallory, and I'm from Spirit Lake.
So our topic today is human trafficking, and the topic in question to discuss is what can we do to bring more awareness to better understand human trafficking. And for our keyword definitions, we have human trafficking, the legal practice of procuring or trading human beings for the purpose of prostitution, forced labor, or other forms of exploitation. Exploitation is another definition that we have on there. It's the use or utilization, how do you say that? Utilization, especially for profit. And then another one is trafficked, to deal or trade. And then awareness, the state or condition of being aware. And then slavery, a condition in which a human being is being owned by another human being. And then modern day, the new place, activity, or in society. A safe place is a place completely protected for you and not exposed to dangers. And a pimp is a person who controls prostitutes and arranges clients for them taking parts in their earning. So I'll start it out. Mine article was Human Trafficking, the Hidden Faces of Modern Day Slavery. And so it was basically, the article shows an example of like a group of individuals who experienced modern day slavery, like within an organization which was their own personal church. And so that was really shocking for a woman to discover that the pastor there was taking advantage of a group of Zambodian boys, and he withheld their identity and their green card so they weren't able to like go out or do anything or get medical help. And the reason why they came was to do local help and to like build their social skills and earn their green card and get paid and send money back to their family, but none of that was like happening. And so the woman, she was like witnessing like more abuse on these boys, and they didn't know like their birthday, or like they haven't contacted their family. So they were like telling people in church, and like the pastor kept on threatening them to like send them back home. And so she reported them to the police, and then the police investigated it, and then they found out that they all had a case of TB that broke out. And so that's how they got investigated and busted. And then it was also a podcast, so it talked about different categories of like who gets human trafficked, and it doesn't stereotype who's trafficked. It can be like anyone from like any age, any older people, younger people, adults. It doesn't depend on like any of your situations. It just happens like in modern day society when you get stolen. It can happen in your gym. It can happen at school. It happens a lot at school. A lot of like people, other kids are trained to like take other kids during like a sleepover. Or yeah, it happens in the foster system, especially with the exchange students coming abroad, and then they don't have their own safe space, or they don't know how to reach out, or especially like advocate for themselves. And it happens in women and children, especially foreign people who they get threatened to call their green card on if they're not like legal, or especially parents who are like in toxic relationships and they get withheld funds, or like their time management. It's just, yeah. Especially in the drug ring too, that's very common. A lot of people selling themselves and then not knowing how to get out of it. So then they talk about like a lot of hotlines and a lot of how to like get help and diners, and yeah. So that was my article. And the next article would be Micah. What is your article?
Well, it's kind of about putting an end to human trafficking, but I guess I'll just summarize what my summary is. But to take away someone's personal capacity to make an informed, uncoerced decision, and to take away their freedom and force them into involuntary slavery is perhaps the most destructive human exploitation someone could commit. And then it kind of talks about like who and how they do it. So it'd be, or it says it occurs everywhere, it can happen to anybody. And then it talks about the various forms, like sex trafficking, forced labor, debt bondage, and then any other forms of involuntary servitude. And then it talks about how slavery was here since the beginning, and then how it's modernized in the 21st century, and how it's not really being recognized. Like, it wasn't really recognized until like 1991, but like a bunch of cases happened, and then the term trafficking hadn't gained significant attention or concern, or hasn't been defined since or until 2000. But then it also goes on about saying how nowadays exploiting victims is easy for traffickers because it doesn't matter who you are in regards to age, gender, nationality, or economic standings. It's also seen by traffickers as easy because they are guided by the economic principle, lower risk and high reward, which means they're able to profit highly from victims due to their lower risk that they will be caught and prosecuted or convicted of their crimes. But this goes into the conclusion: by taking in demand, and human trafficking is possible, but not without taking immediate action from country leaders, law enforcement officials, private organizations, and regular citizens. Putting an end to human trafficking will be an ongoing fight until everyone understands the severity of the issue, and to be held accountable for their actions, or rather inactions, of keeping or protecting and preserving the human autonomy and dignity of the people. And then the victims of human trafficking are daring to imagine the possibility of escape, the chance to live without fear, and the opportunity to live a normal life. Putting an end to modern-day slavery requires global initiative to end human exploitation and protect the personal autonomy of every single human. And that's basically it.
Okay, thank you.
My article, it was about violence against Indigenous people. So I'm just gonna read it to you. It says, although there's not a lot of data on human trafficking, it is real and it's happening on Indian reservations. Indigenous men, women, and children are all being used for profit, whether that be for work, sexual acts, or drugs. Natives with mental illnesses or not access to housing could also be potential targets. It's really sad to see it taking place in our own communities, and bringing awareness to such a touchy subject can be hard, but when it's so close to home, action needs to be taken. Precautions and signs need to be observed. Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Cole has created a task force to bring awareness to the matter of missing and married Indigenous people on their reservation. They are trying to bring light to the situation and find solutions in hopes of getting justice for our communities. We have to show our support and contribute to making a difference. They're aiming to improve law enforcement and make things safer to prevent future tragedies. According to the National Center for Biotechnology Information, Indigenous females are more likely to be murdered than white females. There are so many unsolved cases of our Indigenous people going missing and so little working to get educating ourselves and other people on this topic could be one important step to identifying how widespread this issue really is and what we can do to avoid any more of our people going missing. And I think that, like, as people, like, the biggest thing that we can do is just be aware that this is happening and it happens every day, and just look for the signs. Like, I don't know, like, if a person's being trafficked, like, most of the time they're probably right in front of us, and just don't even realize it. I don't know, like, are they living with like an employer? Are they eating and sleeping? Like, it's just being aware of somebody who's not well and asking them like questions. A lot of times, if you can't even speak to them without another person being there, those are all red flags. So, just being aware.
Good. Next.
In my article, Human Trafficking Overview, human trafficking has a long tragic history, often linked to slavery, war, and socioeconomic disparities. It's a complex issue requiring global attention. Human trafficking is a global issue involving forced labor and sexual exploitation. It affects millions, often targeting vulnerable individuals. It's crucial to raise awareness, support victims, and enforce stricter laws. Human trafficking gained attention in the late 20th century, initially focusing on sex trafficking. An organization enacted the Trafficking Protocol in 2000. Defining human trafficking and setting standards for legislation. The U.S. also passed the Trafficking Victims Protection Act in 2000, making human trafficking a federal offense. Another organization was later amended in 2019 to account for government-involved trafficking. The European Union has also taken measures against trafficking. The International Labour Organization suggests that trafficking rates have increased due to economic disruption from global issues like climate change and COVID-19. 2022 report estimated 50 million people were in modern slavery in 2021. And the organization reported marginalized people, particularly women, girls, and migrant were most commonly trafficked. Efforts to combat trafficking have tripled convictions since 2003. Every country, including the U.S., experiences trafficking. Some ways to help combat human trafficking would be raising awareness, reporting suspicions, and supporting victims' rights are key steps to combat trafficking.
Okay, good. What kind of solutions did your articles present?
So my article was similar to both of theirs, hers and Micah's and Matea's, because with Micah's they talked about how, it was hers, they talked about getting a safe space and identifying the situation about, I identified that the employer was withholding their identity and that they were withholding funds, and then they called 911, they made an alert, got them to a safe space, able to contact their family to help them to understand their situation. And then with Micah's, they did have a hard time identifying if it was human trafficking, but that's why they did make the alert, and they did do a hotline tip. And so there is a hotline that is like 24/7 toll free, and it's also bilingual because a lot of the boys, they couldn't speak English very well, so they didn't even know where they were at, so it was able for them to have their own safe space. But they talked about, one of the boys came on the podcast and talked about how it took a mental toll on them, that they didn't trust nobody, that they just felt like they were always on eggshells and alert, and they still feel like that. And especially with their kids, like they don't share their personal information and they don't have social media. It's just like a lot of things. They gave tips like that, and like they said, and then the foster mom, the one that did the hot tip, she ended up taking all 12 of those boys into her home because they had no place to put them, and then they didn't want to split them up because they were so shaken up during that experience. And then a lot of them didn't want to identify themselves, just undergoing that whole process.
Good.
And what else?
like there's the human trafficking hotline and the 911. They're like, obviously, if you suspect somebody's being trafficked, like, reach out to them first. Don't ever try to do it yourself because you could put yourself in the same situation. Because they're slick, they're really slick. You get nail salons and stuff. It's scary. 911 and the human trafficking hotline for sure.
Raising awareness and reporting suspicions.
Thank you.